What's the strangest punishment your parents ever gave you? Not really a strange punishment, but it turned out strangely I think. When I was probably 5 or 6, something happened. Literally can't remember what I did to deserve the punishment that caused my parents to send me to my room with no lights allowed on and the door closed. I'd never been able to sleep with the door closed and at least a light on in the hall or something till then. This time, I just went to sleep after a while in there with no lights, and that was the last time I needed lights on or the door open when I went to bed. Worked out well from my point of view emo. I should say that I grew up during the late 60s when spanking was just a normal thing too. I don't remember ever actually getting spanked though. I dunno. My parents were never cruel to us when we were children. In fact, maybe I was just sent to my room and I just didn't turn on the light myself. Goodness knows I could have. The switch was on the inside of my room. I might have just pouted on my bed till I fell asleep and realized later that I didn't have the light on. It was around 50 years ago or so. I remember that it happened, but I don't remember the specific circumstances. Worked out well from their point of view too. I got a bad grade on a math test in elementary school. As my dad dropped me off for the day, I quickly told him he needed to sign something. The test. He was so furious that even though I was already late for school, he drove the 2 miles back home, spanked me and made me walk to school. I was so late. I understand that parents want their kids to do well in school, but getting angry like that over a bad grade is so dumb and rather counterproductive. My parents would yell at me if I wasn't on the honor roll and say things that just made me feel like crap. Instead of going to them for help when I was struggling in school, I talked as little about school with them as possible. For some reason my parents allowed my brother and I to have a very basic bow and arrow which we were allowed to shoot at a cardboard box in the backyard. I, being very young and very dumb, crawled into the box while my brother was firing. Parents were not pleased, and to demonstrate how dangerous what I had done was, they made me lay on the couch for the whole day and pretend I was in a hospital bed. I mean, if you were an active kid and weren't allowed to move or play with toys, boring TV and bland food, I can see that as a punishment. Still weird though. I was being a dong as a teen. I think I was 15, and tormenting my little brother by grossing him out. Stuff like burping in his face when he didn't expect it, making him smell my feet, etc. And he really hated it. It made me laugh and I called him a P for being grossed out so easily. After he came to her crying one day about it, my mom warned me that if I didn't stop, I'd be very sorry. I didn't listen. Worst mistake of my childhood. My mom ran a small doggy daycare pet grooming business. The next time I did this to my brother, she put me to work cleaning filthy dog kennels, without gloves, and without a scooper. Worse, she introduced me to what dog shit-chewed glands are, which groomers often have to express. Around 3 times a day that week, I had to express dog shit-chewed glands. I was not allowed to wear gloves. I puked every single time. She planned on the punishment lasting all week, but my bro asked her to let me off the hook after he saw how defeated and broken I looked by Wednesday. Was grounded so much in my life. I would say 3/5 of my first 16 years were grounded. Neighbor convinced my mom to take me to family counseling. When I sat down with him, he asked what my main complaint with them was. I said all of the grounding. So he came up with a list of rules, and if I break them, I get kicked out instead of being kept in, but not kicked out to go hang with my friends. So, they put a tent up in the backyard, and when I broke a rule, I was banished to the tent for a predetermined amount of time. This didn't end up working out, because breaking curfew was 12 hours out in the tent. So I would start breaking curfew on purpose, go out to the tent, wait for my parent to go to sleep, and sneak out of the tent and go hang with my friends all night, until the night I came home to a dead patch of grass where the tent had been, and I had to sleep the night on the patio. I woke up to my next door neighbor staring at me through the fence shaking his head. Safe to say, my parents went back to grounding me after that. Side note, the counselor we went to was later arrested for molesting children. I was always more the artist type. Didn't much care for throwing the football around or working on cars. I wasn't belittled or anything. My family let me do me. But my stepfather was an evil genius, and when I did something that was considered a minor infraction, he'd give me the option of either going to bed early or staying up till my normal bedtime, but having to watch sports with him in the living room. And I couldn't just zone out or read. He'd sit there and make chit chat about the game or try explaining the rules or the player's stats or something else I couldn't have cared less about. I'm 34 and we still laugh about that sometimes. Crap was brutal. To be fair, your stepdad probably wanted to spend time with you doing something he liked as well. If my son ends up not liking sports, not gonna lie, it would be really sad for me. Yeah, I will accept whatever he likes, but right now I do have hope of watching sports with him and getting happy exited etc when something happens. Banned from eating eggs. I was served broccoli quiche, and I stomach it down but ended up gagging it up and spitting it out. My dad became upset by this. You like eggs, you like cheese, you like pie crust, you like broccoli, eat it or you aren't allowed to have eggs anymore. I did not. No more eggs for me. This lasted about 2 days before he recognized how ridiculous that was. I got this logic when I kept telling my parents I hated corned beef hash, but you like all of the ingredients. The texture made me heave. I didn't figure out it was the texture specifically until I left home. Some food textures are just downright unpleasant to me. Rice pudding, tapioca, lumpy gravy, and I immediately get pre-puke salivation and nausea. They were mad I was playing too many video games. Civilization, Master of Orion 2, World of Warcraft I, Final Fantasy I, 2, 3, Tactics, Ogre Battle, Urquan Masters. Okay, so I played lots of games. So they made me go out with friends more. Now keep in mind, I did have friends and was social and would go out once or twice a week with them. But any video games were bad. So my parents forced me to go hang out in my buddy's garage where they just drank and smoked up at 13 years old. A couple of them ended up getting into some serious drugs by around 16. And my parents still were forcing me to go hang out with them. Because their parents were good people that will sort him out. Well, they never did. I always thought it was funny that they considered cerebral strategy games more damaging to my development than hanging out with 16-year-old drunks. When I was 5, my dad had this threat he would always use that went like putting us under the stream or something. I can't put it right in English words. I didn't understand what that meant until one night I just couldn't fall asleep, so I was there lying in bed, and when he came to check up on us, shared room with my 2 sisters, and saw me awake, he decided it was my fault and he had to punish me. So he dragged me to the bathroom and put my head under the running cold water tap. A while later, when he had presumably fallen asleep, my mom came, having heard the entire thing happen because I was obviously shouting at him to stop, and dried my hair, cursing him up and down. To this day I still don't understand what his logic was, and he laughs about it when I mention it. He always had it out for me during those years for some reason. And if you're wondering why my mom didn't stop him, my guess would be during that time housewives just didn't really go against their husbands for whatever reason. I don't hold it against her though. Made me eat biscuits and gravy. I absolutely hated that food as a kid. My obese stepfather hated it. So often the punishment was having those for dinner. I often just didn't eat, which was fine by him. He got my portion. Oof, I was also punished with being served foods I did not like. It was head cheese for my family. I was the only one who couldn't stomach it. Difference being that my parents made me finish, and if I vomited they'd beat me for wasting food. And this isn't some story from the old ages. The crap happened 20 years ago in a western first world country. My dad made me take apart a Super Cub aircraft engine and put it back together. My dad then got in the plane and flew to Boston. This was after I fricked up badly. He wanted to make the point that my actions had consequences and that if I fricked up something like that again, someone I love could die. Dad didn't check the engine before he flew out. He looked me dead in the eye and said that I trust you. Every time you have to do something like this, my life is in your hands. Your mother and I trust you. Put the faith we have in you to work. You aren't a stupid kid. Act like it. That moment freaking terrified me for a second. But I knew I had done the job right. Not really a punishment, more of a life lesson. In my dad's style. Was 14 yo. First time getting wasted. Like really wasted. Had 0.5L bottle of 80% alcohol. No memory of the night. Apparently 2 of my friends had carried me home and talked to my father, who had only asked whether I had anything besides alcohol. Next morning my parents made me breakfast in bed. No penalty. Just a weirdly nice conversation about what went wrong. At the end my father just said, "I'm not gonna tell you to not drink. I know that doesn't work. All I want you to do is make better decisions in life than I did," and left the room. Later that day we went shopping and they bought me a new snowboard. Weird. My parents had an advertisement agency. They would also do pre-print work. I don't know the English term for it, but they would do photo editing and magazine editing, ebooks for high schools and such. I was at 5th grade. I found out they were doing the color and photo editing for a Turkish porno magazine called Chikata, and took it to school and monetized it. NBA collector cards, countless chocolate bars, Magic the Gathering cards, soccer cards were my main currency. I was the king among men. Then a C tried to get his cards back and threatened me to tell the headmaster. I tore one of his cards and said, "If you tell them I will miss the others too." He told on me. The sucker didn't see my bluff. I mean, I cut the cards just in spite. My punishment was to start working for my parents' company after school for 2 hours every day. I learned Photoshop, Corel, scanning old school photo films, learned the printing machine and such. I got good, so they made me work until 7th grade, until they divorced and sold the company. Their divorce was the best thing happened. Honestly, it sounds like you learned some valuable skills. My mom made me eat a donut. I only ate half. I don't like donuts. It's something about the dough. And one morning in elementary, I guess I was sassing off or something, but mom wouldn't let me eat anything else and told me I had to eat one glazed donut. So I sat at the table and picked at half the donut, and then found a book nearby and just ready for the next half hour. She came back into the room and realized I'd chosen the only logical option for a picky eater, starvation, and gave up on the punishment after a while. One friend asked why she didn't just let me starve until I was hungry enough, but that's a simple answer: I'd rather starve, and she got concerned when she realized how long I would go on juice boxes alone. Sounds like you had a thoughtful mom who may have been exposed to some cruel punishment by her parents herself, and it sounds like she is doing her best to break that cycle and be a strict but empathic parent. That's just the vibe I get from that one story at least. Hope your mom continued to raise you with respect and empathy. My dad's punishments were odd. If he caught me doing something I wasn't meant to, he wouldn't stop me from doing it. He'd make me do it more and more until I was sick of it. It worked quite well, TBH. So a lot of people seem to think I'm a guy. Sorry folks, I have a fanny. My parents caught me with a pack of smokes. They had me sit down at the kitchen table and chain smoke a full pack, and I got ill. And 3 days later, started smoking again. My dad smoked and had tried to quit for years. You'd think they'd have a better understanding of addiction. No, I am not Bobby Hill, but feel like I could have been. Not me, but my older brother got into a little fight with a teammate on his little league team who happened to be the coach's son. Both kids were at fault and the coach was a great guy, so he approached my mom after the practice to tell her what happened. She was pissed, so her punishment for him was to dress him up in full uniform, bring him to his team's next game, but have him sit in the bleachers with all the families. Absolutely humiliating for him. He totally learned his lesson and never had a problem with that moving forward. To this day he says it was by far the most effective punishment he ever received. I don't believe my parents punished me too much or strangely. However, I've been living with undiagnosed autism until just some years ago and grew up punishing myself more than my parents ever did. It's sad when teachers and parents do not realize someone has mental issues. The worst punishment I recall was when I was in the middle of a depression, telling my parents I wanted to die, and all they did was replying, "Mom, you make me really upset when you say things like that." And my dad, "Do it," and the stunning reply of, "I can't stop you if that's what you want, but at least wait until grandma dies." It has hurt a lot to get told those things when basically screaming for help. My crime: I was 8 years old and decided to go on a cornfield to hunt foxes with hammer and homemade shurikens. I didn't tell anyone and I was gone several hours. When they found me, my punishment, I had to run home barefoot on dusty road in front of my father who was on a bicycle. While I was running he was telling me a story about a boy who also went on fox hunt. When parents found him, they drenched him with gasoline and kept smacking him with a stick until sausages fell from his body. I didn't mind the running, but that story gave me creeps for several years. Let me first say that my mom rarely punished me because I was a kind of a goody two shoes. Anyway, when I was in 4th grade I forgot to bring a homework assignment to class. My teacher made me sit outside the class while they went over the assignment. I was so embarrassed because I hadn't ever gotten into trouble at school and because my cousin's class was next door, so he saw me sitting outside and he and his friends teased me quite a bit. I was a shy kid so the teasing was horrible. When we got home my cousin then told both my aunt and my mom what happened, so my mom decided to punish me by making me sit on the porch and watch all the kids play kickball without me. Looking back, the punishment was odd. I was on punishment but still got to go outside and at least chat with my friends. Plus, it's not like the punishment would motivate me to do better. I was a goody two shoes who made one mistake. So she was like, hey, I'm supposed to discourage this. Maybe I should mildly inconvenience her. I was about 6 or 7 and an extremely picky eater. Still am. I could usually be found at dinner time sitting at the table refusing to eat and my dad making me sit there until I cleared my plate. I was good at putting food in my glass of milk or in my napkin when no one was looking, so usually it was no big deal. However, on one particular night he decided to keep a close eye on me and we had crab cakes. I absolutely detest seafood of any kind. I took a big bit of the crab, probably thinking that it would go down quickly and I would be done. No, it went down and immediately came back up. My dad, being an butthole, decided he was going to teach me a lesson, probably about wasting food and his time, and made me re-eat the crab. I asked him about this recently and of course he has no memory of it. I'll never forget it. It was that traumatizing. Me and my brothers were fighting. As punishment our parents made us all read and give a book report, but I love to read, always have, so while my brothers got to read The Hardy Boys, I had to read a book about flower arranging. After about 2 hours I came out crying about how I didn't want to read about flowers anymore. They made me report on what I'd read so far. Apparently watching a crying 7-year-old talk about how you can use baby's breath to accent other flowers is something you still laugh about 20 years later. When I was in the 7th grade I got a 2-day suspension for fighting. We were playing kickball and this one kid, Alexis, was being a real dong with everyone, purposely trying to be them as pitcher and running into them trying to knock them over when he was taking a base. I'm playing second base at one point and he runs into me like that, knocks me back. He was pretty fast so it was a hard hit, and I just lost it and got up and started throwing punches. The gym teacher came and broke us up right away and dragged us to the principal's office. I'm lucky that it wasn't now because I would have probably gotten expelled, but I got off with just 2 days of suspension. I explained to my parents why I was fighting and they understood I was just standing up to an butthole. It just so happened that my grandfather and aunt were visiting from Mexico during that time. That aunt is 7 years younger than me. My grandfather had another kid with his new wife in his 60s, and my parents decided that my punishment would be to babysit and play with her the 2 days I was out of school. I always found it funny that my punishment for fighting was being a babysitter so my dad and my grandpa could do more stuff without a hyper little kid around. I feel like it would be weird having an aunt younger than you. When my sister was 5 she was handing out invitations to her birthday. Around this time she had a fetish for long hair and she passed out an invite to one of her short-haired friends. Then she turned around and yanked it out of her hands and said, "You aren't invited, you don't have long hair," and just walked away. When the short-haired girl got home she cried to her parents about what happened. The parents of the short-haired girl called my parents and told them what happened. They interrogated my sister and when she confessed my parents cut her hair. She was bawling all the way home. From ages 3-17 my mother's default punishment was verbal. "You're the reason I couldn't go to college" was her go-to even after I moved out and we'd argue. Followed by physical, belt, Hot Wheels track. Followed by bringing me a snack because she felt bad. Like every time. Like when I was 6, I tripped over something on the floor and spilled her drink. was reminded that she had me rather than a degree, then was beaten, and finally given a bowl of chips. The strange part is the snack. BTW, man, I'm in my 30s now and I still wonder what the heck lessons she was trying to teach, apart from don't knock someone up your senior year of high school like your dad did. Have some store brand knockoff Cheetos. When I got in trouble, my mom sent me to my grandpa. He made me go fishing, walking in the woods, and hunting with him, and he made me learn about the outdoors, what to eat and not to eat, how to tie knots, how to throw a knife and tomahawk, how to shoot a gun, how to make fire, how to make shelter. He would never yell at me or directly berate me about what I did. He just told me what good things were, and gave examples of good behavior that were vaguely like what I had done wrong. So it was like he was telling me a story, but instead he was telling me what the right thing to do was. For example, I got caught shoplifting. I fell in with some bad kids in the 7th grade. The only thing he said to me was that he was disappointed in me for doing that. Then, the next morning he woke me up before dawn to go fishing and mushroom hunting. While we were fishing, he told me about how laws work, why they're important, and why we should follow them. I feel like it was the most effective punishment. To this day I'm grateful that I had my grandpa to deal with me when I was bad. He made me want to be a good person, told me how to do it, and then at the end of the summer or weekend or whatever, he sent me back to my mom's to work on what he told me, and I think I turned out to be a pretty good person. Not me but my younger brother. He lied several times as a 5th grader about silly crap like library books, losing a sweatshirt, $5 my granddad gave him. Had discussions several times before the final lie. My parents had gotten a ton of rocks to form a sort of path in the backyard, so the final punishment was for him to lug the rocks from the front of the house all the way to the back. Took a few hours. My parents got to sit and relax, and he stopped lying. He was fine and we laugh about it now before anyone says something. Bit of backstory. Parents divorced. My mother, brother and I moved. Eventually mother remarried to our step-Nazi stepdad. He felt like dealing with the SS from a teen's perspective. At this time I was around 14, and I didn't care for TV at all. Internet was my go-to. So, middle of summer, I came home from school and head up to my room to find my brother and stepfather connecting a TV in my room. I wasn't asked if I wanted one. I wasn't given a choice. I got home and they were connecting the wires. I didn't want this TV. Firstly because I won't use it. It's not like they got a new TV either. It was an old fatback TV we already had, so no issue there. And secondly, my room had an angled ceiling so space was already something lacking, and I had nowhere to feng shui this thing with the room. So I told them, thanks but I really don't want a TV, and I swear it looked like I called him a piece of crap dog sucker. Immediate screaming about how ungrateful I am. Grounded for 3 weeks. Yada yada yada. Which for him back then, 3 weeks was generous. I'm fuming because I figured at that age, not wanting a TV would be fine, if not better, because I didn't want to be glued to it like he was to his. But the real kicker is at dinner, he told me to pay him back for the cable he bought to hook up my TV. That's one of his qualities, I guess. TL. DR. Got grounded for 3 weeks for not wanting a TV in my room. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.